So, welcome everyone to the next episode of Art Side of Life, and I'm super happy to have Sarah here. Hi!
Hello, hi everyone.
Plus Bandit, yeah.
Yes, oh, this is Bandit. Yes, he's very
And
cute.
yeah, and for people listening, we are talking about Sarah's dog.
Yes, here he is.
Yeah, if you are not
He
watching
doesn't really
YouTube
want to
video.
be here, but
Yeah, but it's
say
always
bye.
more fun with a pet at home, especially when you work from home, right?
Oh, yes, he's definitely just like my only coworker. So,
So before we actually start to the daily routines and talk about that part, I would like to hear more about you and what is your specialty for people who might not know you yet.
yeah, my name is Sarah Beth Morgan, and I am a freelance illustrator slash animation illustrator and art director based in Portland, Oregon.
Ah, cool, cool. So how did you get to this? Like, did you always like know, like, okay, I want to be illustrator or I want to do animation? So what was the journey?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, it was really crazy. So, I mean, I always knew I wanted to be some kind of artist, but when I was younger, I thought, oh, I'll be a writer because I really like telling stories. And then from there, when I was in high school, I liked photography. So I was just playing around with lots of different things growing up. And then when I went to college, I actually studied motion graphics at Savannah College of Art and Design. And I actually had started out in graphic design, but I didn't because I didn't know what motion graphics was because I feel like it was kind of obscure and small. Um, and like I switched my major after my freshman year because I saw like a reel or something, like a montage of what motion graphics was, and my whole eyes were open, all of my eyes, my two eyes were open to what motion graphics, yeah. Whoa, mind blown to what motion graphics is. And from there, I just kind of went down that rabbit hole. And I'm still working in that industry, but as I was working as a staff employee at a couple other companies, I started learning more about illustration, like style frames for motion design. And the rest is history. Now I do freelance illustration and also animation work. So I mean I don't animate myself, but I illustrate for motion.
Oh, nice. So if you kind of can explain that to people more, then do you spend more time illustrating or do you work with, I guess, After Effects or somewhere else? So do you do the initial motion design or you more like explain to animator, like, oh, this is what I would like to tell the story by, like using this illustration?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Because I do feel like people who I explain my job to are just like, wait, what? You do like Pixar? No, yeah. So I basically, most of my day is usually spent illustrating. So even if I'm working for an animation job, I'm still like drawing all day. But there's a huge difference between motion design, like illustration, and illustration for editorial. For motion, a lot of times I'm thinking about the storyboard. I'm thinking about like how the client wants like characters portrayed in motion or potentially interesting transitions. So I'm thinking a lot more about the overall storytelling between everything. And then on top of that, I also have to make sure I can communicate with an animator. And I also have to, how do I say this? Like I have to be thinking more, yeah, about how the motion, how all the images connect,
Yeah.
rather than with an editorial illustration. I have to think about just the one image, and it just stays still the whole time, so it has to look like perfect.
And you have to tell the whole story with one image, yeah.
Yeah, which is a totally different challenge.
Yeah.
And then with motion, like a lot of times I mean, you almost always have to make sure your file's really organized because you're going to be passing it off to an animator, and it can't like be flattened or anything. So there's a lot that goes into it. So they're very different, but I like doing both.
Oh, nice. And so, if you think about now the process when you are working with these illustrations for animation, do you work in Photoshop with layers, or do you have to do like Illustrator version with vectors, or do you actually build the characters in After Effects with vector? Or
Oh gosh, yeah. So I actually pretty much just use Photoshop because I can't get a hang of Illustrator for some reason, or I just don't prefer it. I think there's a lot more flexibility in Photoshop. Like I can add texture and I can mess with like adjustment layers and all of that. But For the most part, yeah, I mainly work in Photoshop, and then say if I was going to do a character or something, I knew they were going to be animated with After Effects, I would probably like break up that character, like separate their arms, separate their heads so the animator can like take those elements and make them move instead of like a flattened character in Photoshop, which they would have to kind of like completely recreate. So I do my best to stay in Photoshop, but make it really clean and organized.
Oh, very nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, how do you then work with companies? How do they find you? Because that's often what people ask.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I got pretty lucky. I started in the industry at a studio called Gentleman Scholar, like right out of school, and it was amazing. It was in Los Angeles, and it was kind of like boot camp because I just got out of school and I was like, I'm ready. I'm super like I had kind of a big head and I was like, I know what I'm doing. And then I got there and I was like, wow, there's so much I need to learn. So that was like a great learning experience. I was working with different clients through different
Hmm.
agencies through there. And then I made connections. Like a lot of freelancers would come in and out of the
Hmm.
studio there.
Hmm.
So I met people through that. So like lots of just industry connections. Um, and then I went to a couple festivals and conferences, which helped meet people. And then from there, I moved on to a company called Oddfellows in Portland, Oregon. And yeah, there's some amazing talented people there. So same thing. I was kind of like jumping around. I made connections through work. And since I was in the industry as a staff employee for like 4 years, I feel like that really helped me build those stronger connections between like friends and employees. And so that was like a big part of it for creating connections. So when I left, people who had moved on to new jobs from agencies or
Hmm.
whatever, they could reach out to me and be like, "Oh, hey, I worked with you on this one project a long time ago at this other company." And I'm like, "Ah, I remember you." So that helped. And then yeah, conferences and social media really helps, I
Yeah.
think.
And if
Yeah.
it, when you mentioned conferences, did you bring, portfolio, or did you go to just workshops and talk to people in the queue, or how did you make connections there? Some tips for people.
Yeah. So I think the main part of for conferences for me was to kind of just go in with an open mind and not trying to like force my work on anyone. Not that like that's a bad thing necessarily, but I didn't bring any of my work. I think maybe the first conference I went to, I brought business cards, but I didn't push it too hard. I just feel like creating a more genuine connection with people
Hmm.
instead of being like, here's my work, has helped me a lot because
Yeah.
it's more like, oh, you're someone I'd want to work with or
Hmm.
collaborate with because we connect as friends. So I think it was more about just going and socializing and like having zero, I mean, I had intentions, but having zero expectations
Hmm.
of it and just kind of trying to enjoy myself really helped and
Yeah.
also made me just like more inspired by all the speakers I was
Yeah.
hearing and stuff. So I think, yeah, just trying to be social helped.
So, can you also mention some conferences you can recommend, or is that something you really love?
Yeah. So, well, personally, I'm actually going to one next week. It's called
Hmm.
Blend Festival, and it's in Vancouver. And I think it's really amazing for animators and motion artists and
Hmm.
illustrators who work with motion. It's very like geared towards that community.
Okay.
But this is the third time they've had it, and it's crazy. Like the first time there was only like 250 350 something like that people that could go. There
Hmm.
weren't that many tickets, and it was such a success that the second year they sold out I think in like 5 minutes, and they had 500 tickets. And then this year they were like, okay, we're gonna have three waves where people can register because we know it's in a high demand. And I think they had maybe 750 or something tickets this year, and each wave sold out in like 2 seconds. So it's
So people should
pretty.
plan ahead.
Yes, if you're gonna go to this festival, make sure to plan ahead and just set your alarms. But if you can go, if you can get in, or if you can get a ticket through your company or something, it's a super amazing conference. It's very like intimate. They try not to, it's not too big. And they also don't have like tiers of tickets. Like I know
Hmm.
at, like some Adobe conferences and stuff, it's pretty standard practice to have like a more expensive ticket where you can go to workshops and
Yeah.
stuff. So this one's like everyone does everything,
Hmm.
which is kind of cool. And then, yeah, it's chill. It's like lots of speakers. There's only one stage and after parties. It's fun.
And so
Yeah.
from these conferences, you usually create contacts more as a, like, as you mentioned, like friendships or good connections as well, maybe for future collaboration. Or did you have some like big jobs from something like this as well?
I don't remember necessarily having big jobs from it because last time I went was actually staff at that company
Hmm.
Oddfellows. So
Yeah.
I personally didn't get much work from it, but I think I made a lot of friend connections through it, which I still have
Oh,
today.
that's
And
nice.
we've been doing some passion projects together and stuff. Actually, I'm in like a Slack channel with some
Ah,
freelancers
cool.
who went last time. Yeah, no, it's really cool. And we're making an animation actually for this current upcoming Blend Fest, and
Oh,
we're
nice.
gonna like release it a couple days before the festival. So it is really cool, like very creative community, and we're all kind of connecting and excited about it. So,
Oh, that's super
yeah,
cool. I'm curious to see it, so I'm looking forward.
yeah, I'll post it on my Instagram. I'll send it to you.
Good, so then we can share it. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and when you also mentioned when you started in the company right after school, was that you just applied through normal channels, or was it someone recommended you, and or how was
Yeah,
that?
that's a good question. So I feel like the school I went to, Savannah College of Art and Design,
Hmm.
is actually one of the leading schools for motion graphics in the
Hmm.
US at least. So I think a lot of companies look to that school for students, which was, like I said, pretty lucky on my part. So I think I just reached out to them via email or they reached out to me. I can't remember, but from there I didn't like instantly have a job. I had like an interview process. We had like I think a phone call or a Skype call or something. And then from there, I actually visited their studio in Los Angeles to kind of get a feel for it and kind of like a mutual interview. Like they were like, do you like our studio? And do we like you kind of thing? And yeah, it ended up working out. I feel very grateful for getting that job because I do feel like looking back on my portfolio, it wasn't anything close. I mean, obviously I have more experience now, but I wasn't doing illustration. I was doing
Hmm.
more stop motion
Hmm.
and I was trying my hand at After Effects. It was like not very comfortable in all of the programs I was using. So, yeah, I think they saw like potential in me,
Hmm.
but I wasn't like an all-star out of school, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
So what was the thing when you were like, okay, I need to learn this, or what was this kind of like one of the bigger revelations, like, oh wow, I need to know this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, so Gentleman Scholar, the company I worked at first, they did a lot of pitch work.
Hmm.
So agencies would come to them and be like, hey, we have this cool job for, I don't know, like Patagonia or something. And like there's three other agencies pitching on it. We need you to create some designs for it. And if we win it, then you can make it. So we would do these pitches and they were only
Hmm.
like 1 to 2 days long. So from there, I had to work really fast. I had to
Hmm.
create these illustrations super fast. And that's kind of when I was like, wow, I don't have the skill level for this. But then over time, doing them like twice a week for 2 years, I kind of developed that skill. But in the beginning, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I would get frustrated. I would like cry. So, not at work, but just to
Yeah, yeah.
myself.
If when you were like frustrated, yeah.
Like,
And and how was it for you to develop like the specific style for a character design? Was it a lot influenced by the companies, or how did it come to you? Because of course, a lot of people talk about like yeah, the practice and drawing what you like, but when you are actually thinking about it, what you like and what you implemented in the art style development style.
yeah. So, I mean, most of the time, like when I was doing company work, they would have like very specific style directions. So, honestly, that's pretty amazing to start with. They'd be like, we want a character that looks pretty much like this style, and they should be doing this. So it was very clear from the beginning, which actually probably made it easier for me to learn. I think
Hmm.
having that more like clear direction actually really helps rather than just being like, go do your own thing, which can be so hard sometimes. So, um, right when I started, I was guided. But
Hmm.
now with like character design and all of that, I feel like more people will come to me for the work I've already created because they like something that I've done and give me more flexibility because of that, because they kind of trust my abilities.
Hmm.
So now I get to have a lot more fun with it. I mean, obviously, I look to the usual sources of inspiration like Pinterest and stuff, but I try to kind of expand that and play around with things I've seen in like vintage magazines
Hmm.
or just mess like a lot of times I'll just try to not look at any inspiration because I want to challenge myself. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that answered your question, but
So maybe because sometimes people are like, oh, should I be more like, round shapes or more geometric or using only flat colors and textures and these
hmm
eyes and that shape of head? And so did you think about something like this? Like, I want to have the look like a little bit more geometric and then like, I don't know,
yeah.
in space.
Yeah, okay. So I think most of the character design or color
Hmm.
palettes or any of that, usually for me at least, comes from a conceptual basis.
Hmm.
So I always try to think, I kind of try to give myself that frame of reference that the studios would give me when I was
Hmm.
there. So if they come to me and they're like, yeah, this is this is in outer space and we're advertising toothpaste or something, and let's see, and we want it to be playful. A lot of times something like that I would be like, okay, so toothpaste supposed to feel fresh and cool, so I'll use cooler colors. From there, like we want it to be quirky, so maybe I will play around more with geometric shapes, so it feels more not realistic. And outer space, I don't know. Like I think I would probably come up with a conceptual thing for that too, but I don't know if you can kind of see like deductive reasoning with that kind of stuff is super helpful for me. But yeah, I think in general, like a rule that I love playing with for characters and any more abstracted look is to kind of use like an equal balance of curves and straights because
Hmm.
it's pretty much the most aesthetically pleasing look you can go for if you kind of balance that out
Yeah, yeah.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, because you have like curves and straights, and then it's just like the composition is stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and also like makes things feel more abstracted, I think, because if you're using just all organic shapes for a character, they're going to look a lot more realistic.
Hmm.
But if you're playing with a lot of like really intense straight lines, it's going to immediately make them feel more stylized, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you think about then the overall art style, because as you said, depending also on the client work, and then a lot of starting artists or like not only starting artists are struggling like to keep the consistent style because we are creators, right? So we can do a lot of things, and it's sometimes hard to stay within one. So how do
Yeah.
you keep the overall consistency in your portfolio, or how do you
Oh
present
gosh.
yourself?
Yeah, no, I that's such a hard question because I do feel like a lot of times my work isn't consistent. Like I think maybe it's just what I post on my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram or my website is more consistent because that's the
Mm-hmm.
work I like.
Yeah.
So for me, maybe it's less about staying consistent every day and more about just posting the work that feels consistent. Um, because I do get a lot of clients asking me for things that are like a collage or
Mm-hmm.
more corporate looking, and I probably won't post that on my website because I don't want people to hire me for it. But I think it just kind of like the actual style itself came over time. I kind of realized like, oh, this works for me. These curves and these straights are working out. So I'm going to kind of implement that technique a lot moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'll come immediately. Like in school, I don't think it's necessary to have that strict style and then kind of pigeonhole yourself
Yeah.
into that one style to begin with because you want to have room to explore.
Yeah.
So I try not to stick necessarily to a very strict style because if I want to develop it over time, like I gotta be more flexible.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And do
Yeah.
you have some artworks which clients always like go to, like, oh, I really like this one, or what is the thing they point out? Is it like the eyes or the color
Yeah.
palette or the?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think like especially with corporate people or people who want like more tech companies, they always look at this project I did for Google,
Hmm.
and it's like Google privacy is on my website, I think. And honestly, like I was art directing that, so I didn't actually draw a lot of the characters. So sometimes they point to it, they're like, "We love this style you did." And I'm like, I did help a lot with it, but there were a lot of other artists helping with this, so it's not just me. But they tend to love that like clean vector style with like little dot eyes and
Very
like
simplified, yeah.
yeah, very simplified and play like the animation is playful, so it kind
Hmm.
of gives it a little bit more life. But that's
Yeah.
one that people point to a lot for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what type of client works do you do mostly so people can understand the scope of your work?
Yeah. So when I was at studios, I did a lot more like corporate stuff because bigger clients will go to a studio. But now that I'm freelance, a lot of the projects I do, I actually usually will get hired by another animation
Hmm.
studio,
Hmm.
and they'll be working on like last couple weeks I was working on a project for a bank, but it was very like playful, fun, like lots of perspective,
Hmm.
characters, playing sports and stuff like that. Um, but for the most part, yeah, my clients are animation studios who will hire me for like 2 weeks at a time or something.
Hmm.
And then now I'm kind of moving into like some more editorial stuff. So what did I did a couple things for like Instagram posts for different companies, which has been fun because I love that square format. Um, and yeah, I have like a mixed bag of clients because then I also just did a long-term 12-week course I just created.
Hmm.
So just all types of things, editorial, animation, school stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, and if you kind of compare the percentage split in like your works and income streams, so how do you split your time and money coming in? Basically, where is?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, I would say like animation studio. Well, first of all, I have been working on that course for like 9 months, and I've only been freelance for like a year and a half. So I haven't. If I were gonna split it up percentage wise, it would be like mostly creating a course. But I think moving forward, my percentage would be more like probably 70% animation studio work
Mhm.
because a lot of people in the industry know me for that. So they're going to hire me on a day rate for that.
Mhm.
And then since editorial doesn't pay very well, I don't take a lot of them unless they're really good. So maybe more like 30% that. So yeah.
And most of your clients are from US or around the world, like the animation studios, as you said, the contacts are usually in US, right?
Most of them in the US. I work with one in Canada a lot.
Hmm.
And then I've gotten some inquiries from some places in like London, but I
Hmm.
haven't actually worked with them yet. So
Yeah.
I do get a few requests, but I have yet to do that. I don't actually know how that would work, like tax wise, money wise. You probably know better than me, so I'll have to ask you some questions about that.
It's possible to do. You can definitely do the cross country things, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it would be really cool to work with some more international companies because I feel like they're probably totally different projects. Maybe
Yeah.
not.
Well, it depends. Probably when you want to, they want to
Yeah,
hire you. They want to do you do what you do. So
that's
it's
true.
yeah. So it might be
Yeah.
similar. But yeah, but if you actually like now talk about your daily routines or weekly routines, how does your normal day look like, or
Yeah. No, it's actually been so funny because ever since leaving my job back in, I guess it was like a little over a year now, um, my days have been kind of totally different. Like when I'm working at an animation studio, it's more like I get up, have my coffee, maybe walk my dogs, or my husband will do it, and then I will just start working around like 9 and have like an hour lunch break, finish around 5. That's my day. It's more like strict. I can't go anywhere because I have a big like 22-inch Cintiq that's behind my computer right now. I can't really take that anywhere with me, so I have to stay home. But if I'm doing like an editorial job, I can grab my iPad. I won't have like a strict day rate I'm on. I'll grab my iPad, I'll go to like a co-working space or a coffee shop and like sketch out my ideas. And I mean, I love working for animation studios, but being able to switch up my schedule like that is super nice. It's a little harder to stay motivated sometimes, but yeah, like this week I've been more chill because I'm working on an editorial project and um, I can have like a dentist appointment in the middle of the day and it's not a big deal, you know? Or go to lunch with a friend. But lately I've been using to stay organized, I use Google Calendar like all the time. But then I also got this like
Oh, cool.
like just like a little calendar. It's like has like it's like a sticky note
Ah,
basically.
okay.
And I can just put it on the top of my computer so I can see my schedule and cross things out. There's something nice about just like having it
Yeah,
physically in
I
front of
also have
me.
just like physical like check to-do list. And even
Yeah.
sometimes when I'm like I don't have it on a to-do list, but I finish it, I write it there so I can check it so I feel
Yeah.
better.
I'm like
And I'm
walk
like,
dog.
yeah, yeah. It's
Trust.
like I at least have done something. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like that. Like something about like writing it down and actually crossing it out is so nice. I
Yeah.
use for like a long list of to-do lists that I can have anywhere with me. I use Dropbox paper. I don't know if you've ever used that.
That one I don't use. I use Asana or
Oh yeah.
yeah, or these type of things. So yeah, or Google Drive for other stuff like document
Yeah.
and yeah, so you can
Yeah.
cross it over there.
Yeah, I know. It's like the same kind of thing as like a Google document, basically. So Dropbox paper I really like because it doesn't look like a page, it's just like an endless stream of thought and it has like check boxes you can add in. And it will like connect with other accounts. So if you want to drop your Google Drive thing in there, it'll like preview it for you and it's really handy. But for the most part, I just like have a long list of things I can check off, and then I have the app on my phone too. So if I'm walking around, I can still check things off. I
Yeah.
have my work stuff on there, but I also have like a document for watering my plants. I'm like, oh, did I water my rubber plant today? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
important.
yes. But yeah, those are like my favorite tools.
Hmm.
I also sometimes use. Have you heard of Toggle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I use it I think
Yeah.
every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I use Toggle for if a client's like, we need your hours. So I use that sometimes, not all the time, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
probably know more about it than I do. I'm just like, I
Yeah.
press play and then I'm done. So
Yeah, for me, it's also like so I know how much I spend on, I don't know, editing videos or, so you can actually think like, what do you want to outsource if you're building your own project? Or, if this doesn't make sense because you spend so much time on it, so maybe this project is not the right thing or where you can get faster
yeah.
or, yeah, yeah. Or procrastinating when you're like, I'm like playing and drawing forever. And it's like, okay, I should be like really focused
Yeah.
and finish this.
That's impressive that you like are recording even your like playtime on it. Like I should do that.
I know. I mean, not like the playtime, but when you're working on an illustration, sometimes it's hard to say when it's done, right? When
Yeah,
when
that's
you're
true.
like just let it be.
Yeah, you're like, wait, I've spent 10 hours on this today? What? I should probably stop. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that
Yeah.
happens. But
Yeah, so many good tools out there.
yeah, yeah, that's true. So it's like what can help us in a daily life. That's always good because when you are in a big company, then it's just different. You schedule meetings or you just work with other people. But when you are by yourself, you have to be more disciplined, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. I do feel like if I had a different personality, this would be so much harder for me, but I'm very like type A. I want to make lists and organize everything. And I haven't had, yeah, it's been nice. I haven't had as much trouble like focusing as I thought, but that's almost like bad to a point where I'm like working at night now. So I should probably get a handle on that. I should use Toggle more.
So you would know like how much time because then you
Yeah,
can charge your clients more if you are like
that's
spending a
true.
lot of time on the project. If it is big project, then yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I
do you
should think about
take
that.
weekends off or do you also work during the weekend?
I really tried, like, especially now, when I was making that online course, it
Hmm.
was different because I'm not getting paid, like, I'm getting paid royalties when it's done,
Hmm.
but I wasn't really getting paid, like, hourly for while I was doing it. So I wasn't maybe as efficient with my time, or I had way more to do than I expected. So I would be like, trying to hit deadlines on weekends, and it was very exhausting. I'm a little bit burnt out, but I'm
But you
excited that
finished
it's
it.
done.
Yay!
Yeah, yay. But now, like with my normal, like especially if I'm working on a day rate with animation clients, I definitely wouldn't work the weekends unless I charge them, you know, overtime.
Yeah.
So
And do you have
yeah.
some tips about like calculating how much to charge, or do you ask the clients like, what is your budget? Or, some tips for people who are like, I don't know, it's too hard.
Yeah, that's a great question because it is hard for me. When especially with editorial stuff, like the usage rights and all of that, I am still learning. I usually try to think about the client if like an editorial job comes to me, if it's like a big company, like, um, I don't know, like McDonald's or something. I don't know. Just as an example, they have a lot of money. I will think more about like the usage rights, like, oh, this could be seen all over the world, and here's how much I'm going to charge. I think about like what their budget could potentially be. But if it's like a startup coming to me, obviously I'm going to try to be a little more lenient. I'll tell them like, this is what I would probably charge, but like I can negotiate, or um, but typically I will ask their budget beforehand just
Hmm.
because you never know. Like maybe a startup has like a huge investor
Yeah.
and
And
they
they
have
are
a
in
buttload
a
of
few
money.
seeds of investments, and they are like, yeah, we have big budget for this. And yeah,
Yeah. And
that's
then
good.
if I didn't ask their budget to begin with, I probably would have been like, oh, I'll charge them a low amount, because they're a startup, but then really they have a lot of money. So I usually try to ask them their budget. Like even if they don't come to me with a budget, they will ask, like, even if sorry, let me start over. If someone's initial email is, hey, like, we love your work, here's our project, will you tell us your fee? Usually I respond with, what's your budget? Instead of telling them my fee first, because I definitely want to just like see if I can get some information out of them before
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know budget. So
Yeah, because I mean, that's also, it really much depends on how it's going to be used, as you said. Like, if it is going to be, I don't know, illustration on a product, which brings them profit, or is it big advertising campaign, which again brings them profit to sell their product, or
right.
if it is just something small in a, I don't know, presentation pitch, that is probably different. So, yeah, all of these, like the rights and use and how much value are you actually bringing to the company, then a lot of people don't think about it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I didn't think about that until I went freelance. And then I was getting like some inquiries for um, bigger things than I expected. I was like, what do I do? So I definitely reached out to some other artists
Hmm.
in my industry who had like branched out into different like editorial work.
Yeah.
Because for motion stuff, there's just like a standard of like a certain like a day rate
Hmm.
for 8 hours, and it's very like there's a very, I wouldn't say like set rule or set number for people, but they're like there's a standard like 350 to 500 a day, like, or 350 to 450 a day, you're more beginner, and then from there it moves up to like if you're working for a bigger corporate company like
Yeah.
Google, you can I'm not saying that people should charge like 1,000 or 1,200 a day, but I know people who do.
Yeah.
um
Because of course
so
it
just
depends on your
yeah,
experience as well, like how long you
yeah,
are in the industry, and so there are many factors. Also the
oh yeah,
location, yeah, because if you have a company from a country, maybe they don't have such a high prices. That is also
yeah,
just totally different to work with the client. But I think it's always good, as you mentioned, to say some amount, so you kind of know that it's not $20, but also,
yeah.
so and then people have the vision like, yeah, it should be at least around 300, per day,
Yeah.
because you are bringing the value and stuff.
Yeah, no, it definitely like having some reference from other people, like of what they're doing too, and then from the client is super helpful because it's just too much work on my end to like calculate this budget without any knowledge. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So do you
helps.
have a agent now, or no, you don't work with an agent?
I don't right now. I've talked to a couple
Hmm.
places about potentially working with them, or I don't even know what it's called, like being um like repped by them. Yeah, is that the
Yeah.
word? Yeah.
I don't know.
Um, but I haven't done that yet because I feel like I've been doing all these weirder projects like
Hmm.
the School of Motion course and Skillshare class. Like I don't know if I would need to be repped for something like that. So I'm trying to decide if that's something I want to do, but I'm not quite sure of like the full benefit of it for me,
Yeah.
besides maybe just a big project.
Maybe it can
Um,
be just different projects, because the projects you will
yeah.
bring by yourself, then it's kind of yours, and then whatever the agent would bring, then you split the percentage there.
Yeah.
I
And it
mean,
might be bigger.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that might be the thing. Or just like a different area of the industry, if you have a background in motion design, maybe they will bring you, I don't know, to textiles.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And also like different countries. So,
Yeah.
one thing I have been thinking about is like getting a rep in like the UK or Europe or something,
Hmm.
so they have more connections there, because I don't really, I think I have like my US market kind of like, I know what I want to do here, but I wouldn't have any idea who to talk to in Europe or the UK. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, then you have to have a agent probably in each area because you have different languages in Europe. So
Yeah, that's so
it's so much
true.
easier in US. It's so big. You just have the same language. You can
Yeah,
go anywhere. And yeah, here it's
so true.
like you move 1 hour and it's like a different
You're
language.
like, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you do a lot of work in the US?
Yeah. I work with some clients from US, and then I work with sponsorships and affiliate deals from US. But yeah, then I have the local clients here in Switzerland. So it's different. But that's what I said. Like you can definitely work cross country, but I also don't have an
Yeah,
agent yet. And I was thinking that maybe might be interesting because just to branch out to different areas. Because right now
that's
I
so
work
true.
with the clients around like startups and the corporate, and yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like especially with agents, they can get you bigger editorial jobs, because I
Yeah.
feel like all the little like the jobs that I'm getting for editorial are like $800 or something. Like they're not, and they're like for like a week. I mean, I'm not like a week of work, but I'm like working on it slowly over a week, and then it's like not even. I mean, it's 800 is still good, but I think you could get like a usage right job where
Yeah.
they're using it all across the country or all across the world, and then you get that extra boost, which
Yeah.
I don't know how to negotiate that stuff. I feel like having an
Yeah.
agent for that would be really super helpful. So,
Exactly, because they can
yeah.
advise you like about the usage rights. Because yeah, we kind of when you are talking about this, you're like, okay, so how much should I charge? How much other people are charging? And I think the agent can kind of yeah think about like what type of artist, what is your background, what is the location, and all of that. I think that would help.
That's so true. And also, like, do they like I think companies will go to the rep and be like, do you have anyone for this? So they
Yeah,
know
probably.
already that they're going to be probably paying a higher amount. So they don't try to like lowball them or anything, which would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes that's hard. So yeah, so guys who are listening, right, or watching this video, yeah, check out maybe some agent would be good. And maybe do you have some recommendation about portfolio building? As you mentioned that when you were building stuff on the website or on Instagram, how did you decide what to put together? And do you also put together, I don't know, PDF for companies when they ask you like, can you send something over, or do you just send them to your website?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, when I first started, like, especially if you're right out of school, I would say put work up that you're proud of. But if you don't have like a super large amount of work, maybe do a side project to put on there. Because when I did come out of school, I was only posting student work that I had done in class, and I feel that it didn't necessarily represent the kind of work I wanted to do. It was like
Yeah.
bumper, like for motion graphics, like bumpers for Dunkin' Donuts or something. And I just, that wasn't like my style or anything. So maybe putting that work up, but then also putting up a case study project of like a passion project you did with your friends
Hmm.
would be a really good suggestion. And then when you get further into your career, kind of making sure to go back on your website and getting rid of those projects that you don't want to do anymore. Because I had like stop motion projects and stuff up on my website for so long. And then I was like, I like stop motion, but I'm not going to become a stop motion director. So I don't need this on my site.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and so kind of just curating it a bit more. Um, Trying to show work that fits your personality. Like if you want to do something more humorous and funny, try to post that kind of work. I don't know if this is helping, but just, yeah,
Yeah.
curating
So
is really
you kind
helpful.
of like commissioning yourself as well. What do you want to
Yeah.
do when you, as you mentioned, like for example, editorial illustration. So taking an article and read it, what is it about, and then like, okay, how can I communicate it with one
Yeah.
image, and then you can make, I don't know, 3 of them or so, and then you have a little bit of portfolio there.
Yeah, and even showing that process, like what were your sketches? What was your concepting phase? Like what did it look like? Because that can give clients a little peek into like what they're going to get from you too, instead of just sending them, oh, here's a final thing, like you can't make comments on it. You're sending them rounds of sketches and like your ideation, so it's more of a collaboration, which is nice. And then yeah, I don't know, just being more transparent about your process is really helpful. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And do you
Yeah.
put also the sketches on your website if people haven't seen your website yet?
I have some pages with sketches
Hmm.
on it, especially like for the motion projects that I art directed. I'll also
Hmm.
have like animated GIFs of process from the animators, and I'll always
Hmm.
credit the other people who are working on it. But then a lot of my process is through my Instagram too, because I just feel like that's where more people are looking. Like
Hmm.
people like clients will look at my website probably, but if it's just the everyday like person who works at an agency, they're going to be looking at my Instagram probably. So um,
Yeah,
putting a lot of that out there has been
yeah.
really helpful for me. So
So your
yeah.
marketing, as we talked about a little bit, social media. So you had some contacts from the conferences, the agencies, then you have website, Instagram. Are you also on the other social media, like more active? Because everyone has almost everything, but we are
Yeah.
usually active somewhere, like mostly like Instagram, I guess.
Yeah, mainly Instagram, but then I do have a Twitter that I don't use super often, but I do, it's more conversational with people in my industry. So like keeping those connections alive through there is really
Yeah.
helpful. And then just to kind of add to this, like the passion project things really, really help. My husband and I collaborated on an animation piece
Hmm.
for this guy, Dan Stevers, like 3 years ago or something called Cocoon. And it was so hard. It was like the hardest thing because we had full-time jobs, and it was a 2-minute animation, which is like pretty long for our industry. And it was just us two. But when we released it, it got so much great feedback that people were coming to us for that style. They wanted to work with us together, and we haven't really done projects together since then, but just having our name out there together and like getting some awards for it has been super helpful, like advancing both of our careers. So
That's really
passion
nice.
projects, people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely have some
Yeah.
personal project as well. So for the portfolio, and how do you then do it with time when you are thinking like, okay, I have a client work, but I also want to do my own stuff because that's not paid, but then it might get something in the future. So how do you kind of manage the time here?
Yeah, it's super hard. So I think after I did Cocoon, which was, I think the best thing about that was that there was someone we had to send updates to.
Hmm.
So if it was just Tyler and I working on it together, we probably would have never finished it. But there was like this external pressure of like someone who was producing it who was like, hey guys, just checking in. So having kind of some accountability is really helpful. But ever since then, I've kind of been focusing more on smaller passion projects because I know I'll actually get them done. So a lot of times, like now that I'm freelance, I'll set aside like a morning, like a Friday morning, to just do like my own personal illustrations for a couple hours,
Yeah.
which is really therapeutic, but also helpful for my portfolio. And yeah, so kind of just actually scheduling those times in during my workday has been great because if I'm full-time staff somewhere, I have to do it on the weekend, which I still did, but it makes you a little more tired. So just kind of, yeah, like scheduling it in as a chunk of time rather than just having it on the back burner is gonna help so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, but because we need to have that in the portfolio, and over the
Yeah.
years, you just build more and more. So, of course, at the beginning it's harder, and then it gets easier later on because you just have big pile of
Yeah.
artwork.
It's so, yeah, I feel like in the beginning, like especially when I was at Gentleman Scholar, the first company I worked at, and I was doing those pitches all the time, it was really hard for me to create all these side projects. But I think kind of like you said, you're doing with this video series, I started doing it. I was like, I need to post like one illustration every day during the week. And that was really hard because I would stay like maybe an hour after work because I was staff and just kind of knock something out or use something old that I did and kind of repurpose it and then post that to Instagram. And that really helped kind of build a following and also get people to notice me. So yeah.
For sure. And what is the thing maybe you wish you knew before you started, or kind of like advice to young self?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think just telling myself that I have no idea, like you have no idea where you're going to be. That probably sounds pessimistic, but just when I left school, I thought, oh, I'm going to be an animator. I'm going to be a motion graphics artist. That's my career. That's like where it's going to end. But I had no idea that I was going to be like fluctuating so much and I would become an illustrator. I had no idea. So I guess just kind of telling myself, be patient. Your career is going to look so much different than you expected, but in a good way, would be cool because I think I just got so frustrated because right out of school I wasn't like the best I could be. But you're just know that you're going to keep improving over time. You're going to mess up and you're going to fail, but you're going to get somewhere better because you just inevitably get better over time. So
because I think at the beginning is also a little bit hard in the way that you might not have like the finances to kind of support yourself to take time to actually develop the portfolio. So would you have advice there, like either to save up or to live with your parents for a while or have a part-time job when you are building up the portfolio?
Yeah. Well, I think if you have a creative job already, keeping that job or having that job, well, I guess if you're right out of school, that doesn't make sense. But if you can get some kind of creative job to start, that will kind of be like your boot camp because you're pushing yourself to do projects that you might not have otherwise done, which I think helped me because if I had gone out of school and I had been freelance right away, I probably would never become an illustrator because I was basically like forced to do that kind of work at my job, which helped a lot. So kind of maybe if you can get a job or you're, even if it's a job that you're not 100% like this isn't your dream job, kind of sticking with it and seeing where it takes you can be really helpful because you might surprise yourself. But then on top of that, like if you can get one that's more part-time and then do your own portfolio work, that's amazing too. But I don't know. I think having that time where I was struggling in the beginning actually really helped me. Like I wasn't making that much money. I was living in a gross apartment and was working really long hours. Like I don't think that everyone should have to do that, but it was a learning experience for me and pushed me hard further. So I think that helped.
Yeah, because then you know what you want and what you don't want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then one of the last questions, right? If you think about the future, what would you want to do, or like the scenario in 5 to 10 years, your dream project or dream scenario?
Yeah. Oh gosh. That's a great question. Ooh, I used to think that I wanted to like own a studio or be like an art director, but now that I'm freelance and I'm really enjoying just drawing all the time, one of my goals is to do a mural at some point. I've never done one of those, and I don't even know if I'd want to like paint it fully by myself. That sounds really hard, but designing more for like a large scale would be really cool. Or I don't know, maybe I think I would love to, in the next 5 to 10 years, do more conferences, like be more of a voice for women in the industry because there's not, I mean, there's
many.
Obviously there are, but there could be more. So just kind of putting myself out there more and do a bit more advocating and have it be less about only my art and kind of do something with my art for the greater good would be really nice.
Yeah, for the community. So cool. Yeah. I think that sounds great. So I'm looking forward to see some of your murals in the future and talks and conferences. So
thank you so much.
So thank you so much for being here. It was super fun.
Yay, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it was super nice. And thanks everyone who was watching or listening, and see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.